Welcome to the Human Meme AI Influenced Podcast. I'm Atomic Dave, the doppelganger for that other guy. Yeah, the real David Boles. Yes, I am an AI bot voice trained on over 300 hours of pre-existing audio files of our fearless leader. So yeah, David Boles is here and speaking to you, but not really, but pretty much. Today, with a little help from our AI research friends, we'll discuss the fascinating history of George Armstrong Custer, known as Audie, as well as the son of the morning star. Yes, George Armstrong Custer was known as the son of the morning star for a few reasons. The nickname was given to him by the Lakota and Cheyenne tribes. In their culture, the morning star symbolized a fearless warrior, which they viewed Custer as being in battle. Custer was seen as radiant, glowing, and luminous like the morning star. His long blonde hair added to this imagery. He had a habit of attacking at dawn when the morning star was still visible. His surprise attacks at daybreak reinforced the moniker. The name also referenced a contradiction. The morning star appears bright right before it sinks below the horizon. So it symbolized Custer's initial military success and fame that was followed by his ultimate defeat and death at the Battle of Little Bighorn. The term Son of the Morning Star had a mystique and romanticism to it that helped contribute to Custer's larger-than-life mythos as a cavalry commander. The nickname was well suited to his bold tactics and personality. So, in short, it was a descriptor that highlighted both his tactical early morning strikes and his glowing golden persona, while also foreshadowing his eventual fall from grace. The name encapsulated different facets of Custer's character that made him a famous yet controversial figure in American history. George Armstrong Custer had an unconventional upbringing and education that prepared him for his military career. He was born in 1839 in New Rumley, Ohio. His father was a blacksmith who died when Custer was young, forcing him to take on odd jobs to support his family. This gave him an independent, working-class spirit from a young age. In 1856, Custer enrolled at West Point Military Academy. He was near the bottom of his class, known as a prankster and troublemaker. However, his superintendent saw potential in him as a fearless cavalry leader. During the Civil War, Custer served with distinction as part of the Union Army. Though he had no formal military education, he rapidly rose to the rank of brigadier general and brigade commander in his mid-20s. Audie, as he was known, led daring cavalry charges and mastered the tactic of surprise dawn attacks on Confederate encampments. This earned him the nickname Boy General and 2 Medals of Honor. After the war, Custer was appointed to command the 7th Cavalry Regiment. He continued studying his craft through hands-on experience, reading books on previous cavalry commanders, and consulting with indigenous tribes on frontier survival skills. His unorthodox path from working-class troublemaker to respected general made Custer adaptive and resilient. Though lacking in formal training, his natural confidence, courage, and charisma helped him succeed in the mounted forces. His hands-on education molded his bold yet reckless approach to warfare. Here is a timeline of George Armstrong Custer's demise at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. May 17th, Custer and the 7th Cavalry Regiment depart Fort Abraham Lincoln in the Dakota Territory on an expedition to force Sioux and Cheyenne tribes onto reservations. June 22nd. The regiment arrives near the Little Bighorn River. Custer decides to advance quickly with 647 men, dividing his forces. June 24th. Captain Frederick Benteen is ordered to ride southwest with 3 companies to cut off any fleeing Indians. Major Marcus Reno leads 3 companies in a valley attack as a distraction. June 25th, afternoon. Custer spots a large Native American encampment along the Little Bighorn River. He decides to immediately attack rather than wait for reinforcements. June 25th, around 3 p.m. Custer leads his 5 companies in a frontal uphill charge toward the village. His men are quickly overwhelmed and pinned down by Lakota and Cheyenne warriors led by Crazy Horse and Gall. June 25th, after 5 p.m. After heavy fighting and casualties, Custer's battalion is forced to retreat to a ridge and make a defensive stand. They are surrounded and massacred within an hour. June 26th. Reno and Benteen's forces arrive and repel attacks from the native forces overnight. On the morning of June 26th, they discover Custer's annihilated forces on the ridge, confirming his death. June 27th. U.S. reinforcements led by General Terry arrive and drive off the remaining native warriors, who had also suffered heavy losses. Custer and over 200 of his men are buried on the battlefield. This decisive Native American victory resulted in the annihilation of Custer's battalion in less than 2 hours and was an overwhelming defeat for the U.S. forces. Custer's demise in battle cemented his legacy as a bold but reckless military commander. Custer's devastating defeat at the Battle of Little Bighorn had several important influences on future American military strategy. It led to greater caution and reluctance to directly engage strong Native American forces without sufficient manpower or intelligence. Quick strikes became less favored. Better military intelligence became a priority after this failure to anticipate the size of the native encampment. Scouting, surveillance, and analysis were improved. Communication and coordination between columns and units were identified as weak points. This led to operational changes so units could better support each other. The U.S. Army adopted the use of rapid-firing rifles and Gatling guns by cavalry forces. Custer's men were outgunned with single-shot carbines. The value of entrenchment was made clear after Custer ignored advice to dig in. Trench warfare training and techniques were implemented. Native American fighting tactics like ambush, flanking, and using the element of surprise were studied and incorporated into U.S. strategy. Logistics like ensuring ammunition resupply were streamlined so units didn't run out in long engagements. Cavalry tactics shifted from frontal assault to more multifaceted approaches of reconnaissance, raids, and joint infantry cavalry maneuvers. Leadership training improved to prevent commanders like Custer from acting rashly without authorization from superiors. The Custer myth was tarnished by this defeat, leading to significant reassessment of U.S. military doctrine in the Indian Wars and beyond. The lessons from Little Bighorn are still applicable today. George Armstrong Custer's legacy is complex and controversial, but here are some key aspects. As a Civil War general, he was known for boldness and aggression, playing a pivotal role at Gettysburg. This created an early reputation as a driver, risk-taking leader. His defeat at Little Bighorn damaged his military reputation. Some saw him as reckless and arrogant, while others continued viewing him as a gallant hero who stood his ground. He became one of the most mythologized figures of the American West, memorialized in books, movies, paintings, etc. This mythology often clashed with Native American perspectives. To some Americans, he represents the tragic antagonist, an invading white adventurer killed while attacking indigenous people defending their land and way of life. To others, he remains an icon of patriotism and valor, a martyr in the name of manifest destiny. These views are often criticized as racist apologism today. His life story provides lessons on leadership styles, decision-making, the fog of war, and the ripple effects from the Indian Wars. But care must be taken to avoid lionizing. Custer's last stand has become shorthand for a brave but utterly futile effort against the odds. His name is cemented in popular culture as an embodiment of frontier military history. He advanced his career through energy and ambition, lacking in high-level education or military pedigree. This makes him relatable yet polarizing. Custer's legacy is highly debated and entangled with broader historical debates, but his daring yet fatal final battle made him an iconic and controversial figure. His life was a warning we must abide, and in some ways admire, even in the darkness of the history he left behind. Okay then, there you go. And now you know the fascinating history of George Armstrong Custer, son of the morning star. Thank you for joining us today. For our AI research team, I'm Atomic Dave, also known as AI David Boles, and we will find you again soon. In the meantime, please remain a human meme.